Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Kevin Mallory wiped sawdust from his hands as he turned off the table saw. The workshop fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic on College Avenue. He checked his watch. 6:30 p.m. Time to head home. The drive through Fort Collins took 15 minutes. Kevin pulled into the driveway of their modest two-story house, noting Nancy's car already there. Good. Maybe tonight they could talk. He found Nancy in the kitchen, standing at the island with her back to him. She wore a crisp white blouse and dark slacks, her real estate uniform. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect bun. "How was work?" Kevin asked, hanging his keys on the hook by the door. Nancy didn't turn around. "Fine. Sell anything today?" "No." Kevin waited for more. Nancy used to tell him about difficult clients, about houses that wouldn't show well, about other agents who cut corners. Now she gave him nothing. "Where's Cassidy?" "Upstairs." "Homework." Kevin nodded and headed toward the stairs. He found his 12-year-old daughter sitting at her desk, hunched over a math worksheet. Her dark hair fell across her face like a curtain. "Hey, kiddo." Kevin knocked on the doorframe. "How's it going?" Cassidy looked up. Her brown eyes, so much like his own, seemed tired. "It's okay, Dad. Need help with anything?" "No. I'm almost done." Kevin stepped into the room. Art supplies covered one corner of Cassidy's desk. Colored pencils, sketchbooks, half-finished drawings. She had talent. Real talent. "What are you working on?" He pointed to a sketch poking out from under her math book. Cassidy quickly covered it with her arm. "Nothing. Just doodling." "Can I see?" "It's not finished." Kevin backed off. He learned not to push when Cassidy got defensive. "Okay. Dinner in 30 minutes?" "Sure, Dad." Downstairs, Kevin found Nancy still in the kitchen. She was chopping vegetables with sharp, precise cuts. Her jaw was set. "Nancy, we need to talk." "About what?" "About us. About whatever's going on here." Nancy's knife paused for half a second, then resumed its rhythm. "Nothing's going on. Come on. You barely speak to me. When I ask about your day, you shut me down. When I try to touch you, I'm tired, Kevin." Nancy finally turned around. Her green eyes were cold. "I work all day showing houses to people who can't afford them. I come home to a husband who wants to have feelings talks and a daughter who won't listen to anything I say." "Cassidy listens to you." "She listens to you. Everything's Dad this, Dad that. She acts like I don't exist." Kevin frowned. "That's not true, isn't it?" Nancy turned back to her cutting board. "When she needs help with homework, who does she ask? When she's upset about something, who does she run to? When she wants to show off some stupid drawing, who gets to see it first? Nancy. I'm making dinner. Go wash up." Kevin stood there for a moment, watching his wife's rigid back. Something was broken between them, and he didn't know how to fix it. 3 weeks later, Kevin came home to find Nancy sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a stack of papers. She was still in her work clothes, but she'd taken her hair down. It fell in waves around her shoulders. "We need to talk," she said without looking up. Kevin set down his lunchbox. "Okay, sit down." He pulled out the chair across from her. Nancy slid the papers toward him. The top sheet had a letterhead he didn't recognize. "Brennan and Associates, Family Law." "What is this?" "A trial separation." Nancy's voice was calm, businesslike. "I think we both know this isn't working." Kevin stared at the papers. His hands felt heavy. "Nancy, what are you talking about? We can fix this. We can go to counseling." "I don't want to fix it." She finally looked at him. "Kevin, you're too emotional. You cry when you watch movies. You cry when Cassidy gets a good grade. You cried last month because a customer said something nice about a table you made. So it's embarrassing. It's weak. And it's not what Cassidy needs to see in a father figure." Kevin felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not strong enough for her. She needs stability. She needs someone who can make hard decisions without falling apart." "I've never fallen apart." "Haven't you?" Nancy leaned forward. "Remember when she fell off her bike last year? You carried on like she'd broken her neck. It was a scraped knee, Kevin. Kids get scraped knees. I was concerned about my daughter. You were hysterical." Kevin pushed back from the table. "I wasn't hysterical. I was emotional, unpredictable, unstable." Nancy ticked off each word like items on a grocery list. That's not what a 12-year-old girl needs. What she needs is her father. What she needs is a calm, rational parent who can guide her through adolescence without having a breakdown every time something goes wrong. Kevin stood up. His chest felt tight. And you think that's you? I know it is. Where's she right now, Nancy? Where's Cassidy? Nancy glanced toward the stairs. In her room. Doing what? Homework. When's the last time you helped her with homework? When's the last time you asked about her day? When's the last time you looked at one of her drawings? Nancy's jaw tightened. I don't have time for drawings. I'm trying to keep this family financially stable while you play with wood scraps in your little shop. Those wood scraps pay half our mortgage. Barely. Kevin felt heat rising in his face, but he kept his voice level. So this is about money? This is about Cassidy having a secure future. And that means she needs to be with a parent who can provide that. Kevin looked down at the papers again. Trial separation. Temporary custody arrangement. His signature line at the bottom. I'm not signing this. Yes, you are. Nancy stood up. Because if you don't, I'll file for divorce and full custody. And I'll tell the judge about your emotional problems. About how you can't handle stress. About how you're not fit to raise a teenage girl. Emotional problems. Kevin's voice cracked. Since when is caring about your family an emotional problem? Since it interferes with your judgment. Kevin stared at his wife. Really looked at her. When had she become this person? When had caring become weakness in her eyes? Fine, he said quietly. I'll sign it. Good. Nancy sat back down. You can stay in the guest room for now. We'll figure out more permanent arrangements later. What about Cassidy? What about her? Are you going to explain to her why her father is suddenly sleeping in the guest room? Nancy shrugged. I'll tell her we're having some problems. That sometimes adults need space to work things out. Kevin nodded slowly. He picked up a pen from the table and signed his name at the bottom of the papers. Each letter felt like a betrayal. There, he said, setting the pen down. Happy now. Nancy gathered the papers and put them in a folder. I'm doing what's best for our family. No, Kevin said. You're doing what's best for you. He walked upstairs to tell his daughter that everything was about to change. Cassidy ran up the front steps of her house, fishing her key out of her backpack. School had ended early because of teacher conference day, and she wanted to surprise her dad. Maybe he'd let her help in the workshop again. She unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Dad? She called out, and no answer. He was probably still at work. But Mom's car was in the driveway. Mom. Cassidy heard something from upstairs. A low voice, then laughter. Her mom's laughter, but different somehow. Softer. She climbed the stairs quietly, not sure why she was being quiet. The sounds were coming from her parents' bedroom. The door was slightly open. Cassidy approached slowly. Through the crack in the door, she could see her mother sitting on the edge of the bed. But she wasn't alone. The man Cassidy didn't recognize stood near the window. He was tall, with graying hair and broad shoulders. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt. He was saying something to her mother, and Nancy was laughing again. Then the man leaned down and kissed her. Cassidy jerked backward, her heart hammering. She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She watched as her mother kissed the strange man back, her arms wrapping around his neck. This was wrong. This was so wrong. Cassidy must have made a sound because suddenly her mother's head snapped toward the door. Their eyes met through the crack. Cassidy! Nancy's voice was sharp. The bedroom door flew open. Nancy stood there, her hair messed up, her lipstick smeared. Behind her, the man was straightening his shirt. What are you doing home? Nancy demanded. School ended early. Cassidy's voice came out as a whisper. Nancy glanced back at the man, then stepped out into the hallway and closed the door behind her. Cassidy, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Cassidy stared at her mother. Nancy's face was flushed, her eyes bright, with something Cassidy couldn't identify. Anger? Fear? You didn't see anything. Do you understand me? But Mom, nothing. Nancy grabbed Cassidy's shoulders. Her fingers dug in hard enough to hurt. You came home, the house was empty, and you went to your room to do homework. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You just need to keep your mouth shut. Cassidy tried to pull away, but Nancy's grip tightened. Mom, you're hurting me. Listen to me. Nancy's voice dropped to a whisper. If you say one word about this to your father, I will make sure you're taken away from him forever. Do you understand me? Forever. You'll never see him again." Cassidy's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you?" Nancy's hand shot out and slapped Cassidy across the face. The sound echoed in the hallway. Cassidy gasped, her hand flying to her cheek. It stung. It really stung. "Because your father is weak," Nancy hissed. "He's emotional and unstable, and no judge in their right mind would give him custody of a child. So if you want to keep living with him, you'll forget what you saw here today." Cassidy nodded quickly, tears streaming down her face. "Good." Nancy smoothed down her hair. "Now go to your room and stay there until dinner." Cassidy ran down the hall to her bedroom and slammed the door. She threw herself on her bed and buried her face in her pillow. She didn't understand what had just happened, but she knew her world had just changed forever. 2 months into the trial separation, Kevin received a call at work from a lawyer's office. "Mr. Mallory? This is Janet Brennan from Brennan and Associates. I represent your wife in your custody matter." Kevin set down his chisel. "Custody matter?" "Yes, sir. We're filing for divorce on behalf of Mrs. Byrne Mallory, along with a petition for sole custody of your daughter Cassidy." Kevin felt the world tilt. "Sole custody?" "That's correct. We'll be serving you with papers this afternoon. You'll want to retain counsel." The line went dead. Kevin stared at his phone. Nancy was filing for divorce, and she wanted to take Cassidy away from him completely. He closed the shop early and drove home. Nancy's car wasn't in the driveway, but Cassidy was sitting on the front steps with her backpack. "Hey, kiddo, how was school?" "Okay." Cassidy's voice was smaller than usual. She'd been quiet ever since the separation started. Kevin assumed she was adjusting to the new living arrangement. "Where's your mom?" "Don't know. She said she had meetings." They went inside together. Kevin made grilled cheese sandwiches while Cassidy did homework at the kitchen table. She kept glancing up at him with worried eyes. "Dad, yeah, are you and Mom getting divorced?" Kevin's hands stilled on the spatula. "Why do you ask?" "Kids at school. They said when parents separate, they usually get divorced." Kevin turned around. Cassidy was staring down at her math book, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "Maybe," he said honestly. "Would that scare you?" Cassidy nodded. "What would scare you about it? Where would I live?" Kevin sat down across from her. "You'd live with me. Nothing's going to change that." Cassidy looked up. "Promise?" "I promise." But even as he said it, Kevin knew he might not be able to keep that promise. At 4 o'clock, a sheriff's deputy knocked on the door. Kevin signed for the papers and waited until the deputy left before opening the envelope. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Petition for sole legal and physical custody. Motion for temporary restraining order. Kevin read through the documents with growing disbelief. According to Nancy's petition, he was emotionally unstable. He had frequent emotional outbursts that frightened the minor child. He was unable to provide a stable home environment due to his unpredictable behavior. The restraining order requested that he be limited to supervised visits with Cassidy until a custody evaluation could be completed. Kevin sank into a chair. Nancy was trying to paint him as an unfit father. She was using his emotions as love for his daughter as evidence against him. His phone buzzed. A text from Nancy. "Got the papers? You should have signed a separation agreement when you had the chance." Kevin deleted the message without responding. Within a week of being served, Kevin started noticing the looks. At the grocery store, the bank, the coffee shop where he grabbed his morning coffee. People would see him coming and suddenly find something else to occupy their attention. His phone rang during lunch. "Tom Patterson, I own a restaurant downtown." "Kevin, I'm calling about the bar installation." "Yeah, I've got the wood picked out. Should be able to start Monday." Silence on the other end. "Tom, look, Kevin, I'm going to have to cancel." "I'm sorry. Cancel? Why? I can't do business with you right now." "What are you talking about?" "I heard about the custody thing. About the issues you're having." Kevin set down his sandwich. "What issues?" "Look, I don't want to get involved in your personal business, but I can't have someone unstable working in my restaurant. I've got customers to think about." "Unstable? Tom, where are you getting this?" But Tom had already hung up. Kevin stared at his phone. He pulled up Nancy's Facebook page. She'd changed her last name back to Byrne. Her latest post was a photo of her and Cassidy at dinner. The caption read, "Enjoying some quiet time with my daughter. Sometimes you have to protect the people you love most." The comments were full of support. Friends asking if she was okay, offering help if she needed anything. Someone had written, "Stay strong. You're doing the right thing." Kevin scrolled through Nancy's recent posts. She'd been subtle, but the message was clear. Poor Nancy, dealing with a difficult situation. Brave Nancy, protecting her daughter. Nancy, the victim. His phone rang again. This time it was Bill Henderson, who'd commissioned a dining room set. "Kevin, I need to talk to you about the furniture order." Kevin already knew what was coming. "Let me guess. You're canceling." "I'm sorry, man. My wife saw something on Facebook. She's uncomfortable having you in the house." "Bill, I've been in your house a dozen times. I measured your dining room. We picked out the wood together. I know, but what exactly do you think I'm going to do? Attack you with a tape measure?" "It's not that. It's just, my wife heard you've got some kind of anger problem." "Anger problem?" Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "From who?" "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything. I'll still pay the deposit. Consider it a cancellation fee." Kevin hung up and immediately called another client. Same story. And another. Same story. Nancy was destroying his reputation one whisper at a time. She was using her real estate connections, her social media presence, her carefully crafted image as the concerned mother to turn the entire town against him. By Friday, Kevin had lost 4 jobs. His income for the next 2 months had evaporated. He sat in his empty workshop that evening, staring at the half-finished dining room table that Bill Henderson would never pick up. His phone buzzed, got a text from an unknown number. "This is Nolan Ridge, Nancy's friend. Back off the custody fight or things get worse for you." Kevin screenshot the message and saved it. Then he typed back, "See you in court." The Larimer County Courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old wood. Kevin straightened his tie for the 3rd time as he waited outside Judge Maureen Keller's courtroom. His lawyer, Marla Kearns, sat beside him reviewing notes. "Remember what we discussed?" Marla said without looking up. "Stay calm. Don't react to anything Nancy says. Let me handle the objections." Kevin nodded. Across the hallway, Nancy sat with her lawyer, Janet Brennan. Nancy wore a navy blue dress and minimal makeup. She looked professional, composed, sympathetic, like a concerned mother. "All rise." Judge Keller entered the courtroom. She was a small woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and graying brown hair, pulled back in a practical bun. Kevin had researched her online. 15 years on the bench. Known for being tough, but fair. "Be seated," Judge Keller said. "This is a hearing on the motion for temporary custody in the matter of Byrne versus Mallory. Ms. Brennan, you may call your first witness." "Thank you, Your Honor." The petitioner calls Nancy Byrne. Nancy walked to the witness stand with perfect posture. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. "Ms. Byrne," Janet Brennan began, "how long were you married to the respondent?" 14 years. "And you have 1 child together?" "Yes." "Cassidy." "She's 12. Can you describe the respondent's behavior during your marriage?" Nancy folded her hands in her lap. "Kevin has always been very emotional. At first, I thought it was sweet. He cried during movies, at weddings, when Cassidy took her first steps. But as time went on, his emotional reactions became more intense and more frequent." "Can you give the court an example?" "Last year, Cassidy fell off her bicycle. She scraped her knee, a minor injury. But Kevin completely panicked. He was crying and shaking as he carried her inside. I had to take over because he couldn't function." Kevin felt his jaw clench. Marla put a warning hand on his arm. "Were there other incidents?" "Many. He cried when customers complimented his work. He cried when Cassidy got a good grade. He cried during parent-teacher conferences. It was embarrassing and concerning." "How did this behavior affect your daughter?" Nancy's voice softened. "Cassidy started walking on eggshells around her father. She was afraid to tell him about problems at school because she didn't want him to get upset. She couldn't handle his emotional intensity." "Did you discuss this with the respondent?" "I tried, but Kevin became defensive. He said I was being unsupportive. He accused me of not caring about our family because I didn't cry as much as he did." Kevin bit his tongue. "That wasn't what happened. Not even close." "Ms. Byrne, in your opinion, Is a respondent fit to have custody of your daughter? Nancy's eyes filled with tears. She dabbed at them with a tissue. I love Kevin, but I don't think he's emotionally stable enough to raise a teenage girl on his own. Cassidy needs consistency. She needs a parent who can make rational decisions without breaking down. Thank you. No further questions. Judge Keller looked at Marla. Cross-examination. Yes, Your Honor. Marla stood up. Ms. Byrne, you testify that you've been married for 14 years. That's correct. During those 14 years, was your husband ever physically abusive toward you or your daughter? No. Did he ever threaten you or your daughter? No. Has he ever been arrested? No. Has he ever been hospitalized for mental health issues? No. Has he ever missed work due to these emotional problems you've described? Nancy hesitated. Not that I'm aware of. In fact, Mr. Mallory runs a successful business, doesn't he? He has a woodworking shop. A successful woodworking shop. He's been supporting your family for over a decade with his business, hasn't he? We both work. But his income has been substantial enough to help pay for your home, your daughter's expenses, your lifestyle? Yes. Ms. Byrne, you mentioned that your daughter couldn't handle her father's emotional intensity. Can you point to any specific instance where Cassidy told you she was afraid of her father? Another hesitation. She didn't use those words exactly. What words did she use? She just seemed anxious around him sometimes. Anxious how? Objection. Janet Brennan called out. Calls for speculation. Sustained. Judge Keller said. Marla nodded. Ms. Byrne, during your 14-year marriage, who primarily cared for Cassidy when she was sick? We both did. Who helped her with homework? Both of us. Who attended her school events? Both of us. Who tucked her in at night? Nancy's composed mask slipped slightly. Kevin usually did that. Who did Cassidy go to when she had nightmares? Kevin. Who taught her to ride a bike? Kevin. Who encouraged her artistic interests? We both. Nancy stopped. Kevin did. Thank you. No further questions. Judge Keller looked at Nancy. You may step down. Ms. Brennan, do you have any other witnesses? No, Your Honor. We'd like to call Cassidy Mallory. Kevin's stomach dropped. They were going to make his daughter testify that a bailiff brought Cassidy into the courtroom. She looked tiny in the witness chair. She wore a simple blue dress, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Her eyes found Kevin's for a moment before looking away. Hi, Cassidy, Janet Brennan said gently. I know this is scary, but I just want to ask you a few questions, okay? Cassidy nodded. Do you live with your mom or your dad right now? Both. Dad sleeps in the guest room. How do you feel about that arrangement? Cassidy's eyes went to the floor. I don't like it. Why don't you like it? Because they don't talk to each other anymore. Cassidy, has your father ever scared you? Cassidy looked up sharply. No. Have you ever seen him get very upset about small things? Cassidy glanced at her mother, then back at Janet Brennan. Sometimes he gets sad. Sad about what? Different things. Movies. When people are mean to each other. Does it worry you when he gets sad? Another glance at Nancy. Sometimes. Would you feel safer living with your mother? Cassidy's hands were clenched in her lap. I want to live with both of them. But if you had to choose. Objection, Marla called out. Leading the witness. Sustained, Judge Keller said. Rephrase the question. Cassidy, who takes better care of you? Your mom or your dad? Cassidy looked confused. They both take care of me. Who makes you feel safer? Cassidy's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Kevin, then at Nancy, then down at her hands. I don't want to answer that. Cassidy, I said I don't want to answer that. Judge Keller leaned forward. That's enough. The witness is excused. Cassidy practically ran from the witness stand. A bailiff escorted her out of the courtroom. Judge Keller looked at both lawyers. I'm calling a recess. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for the respondent's case. In the meantime, the current arrangement will continue. Mr. Mallory may remain in the family home, and both parents will continue to have access to the child. Kevin felt a small surge of relief. At least he wouldn't lose Cassidy today. As they left the courtroom, Kevin caught up to Cassidy in the hallway. She was sitting on a bench with tears streaming down her face. Hey, kiddo. He sat down beside her. You okay? Cassidy threw her arms around him. I hate this, Dad. I hate all of it. Kevin held her tight. I know. I hate it too. Why can't things go back to the way they were? Kevin closed his eyes. I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know. 3 days after the hearing, Kevin found Cleo in the break room at Fort Collins Medical Center. His older sister was still in her scrubs, eating a sandwich and scrolling through her phone. She looked up when he knocked on the doorframe. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Cleo stood and hugged him. How are you holding up? I've been better. Cleo studied his face. You look like hell. Thanks. That's what I was going for. Sit down. Cleo pushed him into a chair. Tell me what happened in court. Kevin filled her in on Nancy's testimony, on Cassidy's obvious discomfort, on the judge's decision to continue the current arrangement. So Nancy's painting you as an unstable mess. Pretty much. And you just sat there and took it? What was I supposed to do? Jump up and start yelling? That would have proved her point. Cleo shook her head. Kevin, you need to fight back. I'm fighting back. I have a lawyer. You need to fight smarter. Cleo finished her sandwich and leaned forward. Nancy's playing games. She's manipulating the system and counting on you to be too nice to hit back. I'm not going to stoop to her level. I'm not asking you to stoop. I'm asking you to wake up. She's trying to take your daughter away from you. Kevin rubbed his face. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were just going to let it happen. What do you want me to do, Cleo? Document everything. Every interaction, every conversation, every time she's late picking up Cassidy or early dropping her off. Keep a journal. Take pictures. Get evidence. Evidence of what? That you're a good father and she's not as perfect as she pretends to be. Kevin's phone buzzed. A text from Nancy. Picking up Cassidy at 7 for dinner. Have her ready. Kevin showed Cleo the message. See? She doesn't ask. She just tells me what's going to happen. What time is it now? Kevin checked his watch. 6:45. So, she's giving you 15 minutes notice to get Cassidy ready for dinner. Yeah, that's not co-parenting. That's control. Cleo pulled out her own phone. Take a screenshot of that message. Start documenting this stuff. Kevin sighed, but did as she suggested. That evening, Nancy picked up Cassidy without coming inside. Kevin watched from the window as they drove away. Nancy was talking animatedly, gesturing with her hands. Cassidy sat silently in the passenger seat. They returned 2 hours later. Nancy walked Cassidy to the door, but didn't come in. How was dinner? Kevin asked Cassidy. Fine. Where did you go? That place with the pizza. Kevin waited for more details, but Cassidy headed upstairs to her room. Something was off. Cassidy usually loved telling him about her day, about where she went, about what she ate that he knocked on her bedroom door. Can I come in? Sure. Cassidy was sitting on her bed with a sketchbook, but she wasn't drawing. She was just staring at the blank page. Everything okay? Yeah. Kevin sat on the edge of the bed. You seem quiet. Cassidy shrugged. Did something happen at dinner? No. Cassidy, you can talk to me about anything. You know that, right? Cassidy finally looked at him. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Dad, yeah. If Mom wins in court, would I have to live with her all the time? Kevin's chest tightened. The judge hasn't made any decisions yet. But if she wins, I'm not going to let that happen. But what if you can't stop it? Kevin reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind Cassidy's ear. Then I'll keep fighting until I find a way to bring you home. Cassidy leaned against him. I don't want to live with just Mom. Why not? Cassidy was quiet for a long moment. She's different when you're not around. Different how? I can't tell you. Why can't you tell me? I just can't. Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. Cassidy, did someone tell you not to talk to me about something? Cassidy pulled away. I'm tired. Can I go to sleep now? Of course. Kevin kissed the top of her head. I love you, kiddo. I love you too, Dad. Kevin left Cassidy's room with more questions than answers. Something was happening that he didn't understand. Something that was making his daughter afraid to talk to him. He thought about what Cleo had said. Maybe it was time to start paying closer attention. Kevin spent the next week watching and documenting everything. He wrote down the times Nancy picked up Cassidy, the time she brought her back, her demeanor, Cassidy's mood. He took screenshots of Nancy's demanding text messages. He saved voicemails where Nancy's tone was cold and controlling. What he discovered painted a different picture than the one Nancy had presented in court. Nancy was consistently late picking up Cassidy and early dropping her off. She regularly changed plans at the last minute. She made unilateral decisions about Cassidy's schedule without consulting Kevin. And most concerning, Cassidy's mood was consistently darker after spending time with her mother. Kevin also started going through old files, looking for evidence of his involvement in Cassidy's life. What he found was a paper trail that contradicted Nancy's testimony. School forms going back years, all signed by Kevin. Medical records showing Kevin as the emergency contact. Bank statements showing Kevin's payments for Cassidy's art supplies, school trips, and activities. Insurance claims where Kevin was listed as the reporting parent, that he found receipts from stores where he'd bought art supplies for Cassidy. Photos on his phone of projects they'd worked on together. Videos of recitals and school plays where Kevin could be heard cheering in the background. For years, Kevin had been the primary parent. Nancy had been focused on her career, on maintaining her image, on her social life. Kevin had been the one raising their daughter. "This is good," Marla said when Kevin brought her the evidence. "This contradicts her testimony that she was the primary caregiver. What about the emotional stuff? Her claims that I'm unstable. We'll need witnesses. People who can testify to your character. Your customers, Cassidy's teachers, other parents." Kevin thought about his customers. The ones Nancy had turned against him. That might be a problem. What? Kevin explained about the lost contracts, about the whisper campaign, about the text from Nolan Ridge. Marla frowned. "This Nolan Ridge, who is he?" "I don't know. Nancy's friend, apparently." "Kevin, I think your wife might be having an affair." Kevin had suspected it, but hearing it out loud still hit him like a punch to the gut. "If that's true," Marla continued, "it changes everything. Adultery isn't grounds for divorce in Colorado, but could be relevant to custody, especially if this man has been around your daughter. How do we prove it? We need evidence. Photos, witnesses, something concrete." Kevin thought about Cassidy's odd behavior, her reluctance to talk about time spent with Nancy. "I think Cassidy might know something." "Kevin, I need to be very clear about this. You cannot question your daughter about your wife's relationship. It's inappropriate and it could backfire in court." "Then how?" "Let me worry about that. In the meantime, keep documenting everything. And Kevin, yeah, be careful. If Nancy is willing to destroy your reputation, there's no telling what else she might do." That evening, Kevin was in his workshop when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Kevin Mallory." "Yes. This is Tom Patterson. I called you a few weeks ago about the bar installation, right? The one you canceled." "Yeah, about that. I need to talk to you. Can you meet me somewhere?" Kevin glanced at the time. 8 p.m. "Where?" "Starbucks on College. The one by the mall. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Kevin found Tom sitting in a corner booth, looking uncomfortable. Tom was in his 50s, with thinning hair and tired eyes. He owned a small restaurant that specialized in comfort food. "Thanks for coming," Tom said as Kevin sat down. "What's this about?" Tom looked around the coffee shop, then leaned forward. "The reason I canceled your job. It wasn't because I thought you were unstable." "Then what?" "Because someone pressured me to cancel." Kevin felt his pulse quicken. "Who?" "A guy named Nolan Ridge. He owns Ridge Construction. Big operation, lots of commercial contract around town." "What did he say to you?" "He said if I hired you, I'd have trouble getting permits for my kitchen renovation. Said the city might find code violations during inspection. That kind of thing." Kevin stared at Tom. "He threatened you." "Not in so many words. But the message was clear." "Why are you telling me this now?" Tom shifted in his seat. "Because it's been eating at me. And because I saw your little girl at the school pickup yesterday. She looked sad. Real sad." Kevin's chest tightened. "What do you want me to do about it?" "Nothing. I just wanted you to know the truth. And if anyone asks, I'll tell them what really happened." Tom stood up. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're unstable. My wife and I, we got 3 kids. Sometimes they make us cry too." After Tom left, Kevin sat in his car and called Cleo. "I've got evidence that Nancy's boyfriend has been threatening my customers." "Nancy has a boyfriend?" "That's what it looks like. Guy named Nolan Ridge." "Jesus, Kevin, this is bigger than just a custody dispute." "I know. You need to tell your lawyer about this." Tonight, Kevin was about to respond when he saw a familiar car pull into the parking lot. Nancy's white sedan. She parked 3 spaces away from him. Kevin slumped down in his seat and watched as Nancy got out of her car. She was wearing jeans and a sweater casual clothes. not her usual professional attire. She looked around the parking lot, then walked into the Starbucks. About a minute later, she came back out with a tall man in a flannel shirt. The same man Kevin had seen that day at the courthouse. Nolan Ridge. They stood by Nancy's car talking in low voices. Nolan put his arms around Nancy's waist. She leaned into him. Kevin grabbed his phone and started recording. Nancy and Nolan talked for a few more minutes, then kissed goodbye. Nolan got into a black pickup truck and drove away. Nancy got back in her car and left in the opposite direction. Kevin stopped recording and called Marla. I just got video of Nancy with her boyfriend. Send it to me right now. Becky Slater had been a middle school counselor for 8 years. She'd seen it all: kids dealing with divorce, abuse, neglect, bullying. She'd learned to read the signs, and Cassidy Mallory was showing signs. The 12-year-old had always been a quiet student, but lately she'd become withdrawn. Her grades were slipping. Her teachers reported that she seemed distracted, anxious. During lunch, she sat alone and picked at her food. Most concerning was the art. Cassidy had always been a talented artist, creating bright, colorful drawings full of life and movement. But her recent work was dark. Muted colors, harsh lines, figures that looked trapped or frightened. Becky decided it was time for a conversation. Hi, Cassidy. Becky smiled as the girl entered her office. Thanks for coming to see me. Cassidy sat in the chair across from Becky's desk. Am I in trouble? Not at all. I just wanted to check in with you. See how you're doing. I'm fine. Are you? Because your teachers are a little worried about you. Cassidy shrugged. How are things at home? They're okay. Becky pulled out a folder. Inside were several of Cassidy's recent art projects. I've been looking at some of your artwork. You're really talented. Thanks. Becky spread the drawings on her desk. This one particularly caught my attention. It was a charcoal drawing of a house. In one window, a small figure cowered in what looked like a closet. In another window, two larger figures faced each other, one pointing angrily at the other. Can you tell me about this picture? Cassidy stared at the drawing. It's just a house. What about the person in the closet? Sometimes people need quiet places. Are you someone who needs quiet places? Cassidy nodded. When do you need quiet places? When people are yelling. Becky leaned forward slightly. Do people yell at your house? Cassidy's hands twisted in her lap. Sometimes. Who yells? I can't say. Why can't you say? Because I'll get in trouble. Becky felt a familiar chill. Cassidy, has someone told you not to talk about what happens at home? Cassidy looked up sharply. I have to go. I'll be late for class. Cassidy, wait. But the girl was already out of her chair and heading for the door. If you ever want to talk, Becky called after her, my door is always open. Cassidy paused at the door. Ms. Slater, yes. If someone told you a secret and you told other people, could it hurt someone you love? Becky's heart broke a little. Honey, some secrets are meant to be told, especially if they're hurting you or someone else. Cassidy considered this. What if the person who told you the secret said bad things would happen if you told? Then that person was wrong. Adults who care about you want you to be safe and happy. They don't make threats. Cassidy nodded slowly and left. Becky stared at the artwork spread across her desk. As a mandated reporter, she was required to report suspected abuse or neglect. But she needed more than just dark drawings and a nervous child. She needed Cassidy to trust her enough to tell the truth. 2 days later, Cassidy came to Becky's office during lunch. Ms. Slater, can I ask you something? Of course. If a kid saw something bad and they told a grown-up, what would happen? That depends on what they saw. Something that would make their parents get divorced. Becky set down her pen. Cassidy, are you talking about yourself? Cassidy sat down in the chair across from Becky's desk. Maybe. What did you see? My mom with a man who isn't my dad. Becky nodded. That must have been confusing. She said if I told my dad, I'd never see him again. Who said that? My mom. Did she say anything else? Cassidy rolled up her sleeve. There was a faint yellow bruise on her forearm. She got mad when I saw them. Becky's training kicked in. Cassidy, I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that? Cassidy nodded. Has your mother hit you before? Just that once. Has anyone else hurt you? No. Are you afraid to go home? Sometimes. Are you afraid of your father? No. Never. Are you afraid of your mother? Cassidy hesitated. Sometimes. Becky reached for her phone. Cassidy, I need to make some calls. But I want you to know that you did the right thing by telling me. Is my dad going to be okay? I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you and your dad are both okay. Marla Kearns spread the evidence across the conference table in her office. Photos, documents, text message screenshots, bank records, school forms, and Kevin's video of Nancy with Nolan Ridge. This is good, she said. This is very good. Kevin sat across from her, feeling cautiously optimistic for the first time in months. You think we have a chance? I think we have more than a chance. Nancy's entire case is based on the premise that she's the stable, responsible parent and you're the emotional wreck. But the evidence tells a different story. Marla picked up a bank statement. These records show that you've been paying for Cassidy's expenses for years: art supplies, school activities, medical bills. Nancy claims she's been the primary caregiver, but the paper trail says otherwise. What about the school counselor's report? That's the game changer. Marla held up Becky Slater's written statement. A mandated reporter filed a formal complaint alleging that Nancy physically abused Cassidy and threatened her to keep quiet about the affair. That's not the behavior of a stable parent. Kevin felt a mix of relief and rage. Relief that someone believed him. Rage that Nancy had hurt their daughter. The video of Nancy with Ridge confirms the affair, Marla continued. And we have testimony from Tom Patterson that Ridge was using his business connections to sabotage your income. This isn't just adultery, it's a coordinated effort to destroy your life. So what happens now? Now we go to court and present our case. But Kevin, I need to prepare you for what's going to happen in there. What do you mean? Nancy's lawyer is going to come at you hard. She's going to try to make you lose your temper, break down, prove that you're as unstable as they claim. You have to stay calm no matter what she says. I can do that. Can you? Because she's going to attack your character, your parenting, your masculinity. She's going to try to humiliate you in front of the judge. Kevin thought about everything Nancy had put him through. The lies, the manipulation, the attempt to turn his daughter against him. I can handle it. Good. Because this is our one shot. If we lose this hearing, Nancy gets custody and you get supervised visits. If we win, you get Cassidy back. Marla leaned forward. There's something else. The judge has agreed to interview Cassidy in chambers. No lawyers, no parents. Just the judge and Cassidy. Is that good or bad? It depends on whether Cassidy is willing to tell the truth about what's been happening. That evening, Kevin found Cassidy in her room working on a drawing. This one was different from her recent dark artwork. It showed a man and a girl working together in what looked like a workshop. Both figures were smiling. That's a nice picture, Kevin said. It's you and me in your shop. Kevin sat on the edge of her bed. Cassidy, I need to tell you something. We're going back to court next week. Cassidy's pencil stopped moving. Do I have to testify again? The judge wants to talk to you privately. Just you and her. What am I supposed to say? Kevin chose his words carefully. Just tell the truth. Whatever question she asks, just be honest. What if the truth hurts someone? The truth doesn't hurt good people, kiddo. It only hurts people who are doing bad things. Cassidy nodded slowly. Dad, yeah, are you going to win? Kevin wanted to promise her that everything would be okay, but he learned not to make promises he couldn't keep. I'm going to fight as hard as I can to make sure we stay together. What if it's not hard enough? Kevin pulled Cassidy into a hug. Then I'll keep fighting until it is. The courtroom was packed. Kevin sat next to Marla, trying to keep his breathing steady. Across the aisle, Nancy looked confident in a charcoal gray suit. Nolan Ridge sat in the gallery behind her, despite Kevin's lawyer's motion to exclude him. Judge Keller entered and everyone rose. This is the final hearing on custody in the matter of Byrne versus Mallory, she announced. Ms. Brennan, you may call your first witness. The petitioner calls Nancy Byrne to the stand. Nancy walked to the witness box with the same composed confidence she'd shown at the first hearing. She was sworn in and took her seat. Ms. Byrne, Janet Brennan began. Since our last hearing, have you had any additional concerns about Mr. Mallory's fitness as a parent? Yes. His behavior has become more erratic. He's been following me, taking pictures, harassing my friends and colleagues. Kevin's jaw tightened. Marla put a hand on his arm. Can you elaborate? He's been driving by my workplace. He confronted one of my business associates at a coffee shop. He's trying to intimidate people into lying for him. Ms. Byrne, in your professional opinion as a real estate agent, how would you characterize Mr. Mallory's current mental state? Objection, Marla called out. Ms. Byrne is not qualified to give expert testimony on mental health. Sustained, Judge Keller said. Janet Brennan didn't miss a beat. Ms. Byrne, as a mother, do you believe Mr. Mallory is currently capable of providing a stable home for your daughter? No, I don't. A man who cries like that can't protect a child. She needs someone calm. Someone like me. Nancy looked directly at Kevin as she said it. There was something almost triumphant in her expression. Behind her, Nolan Ridge nodded approvingly. No further questions, Janet Brennan said. Cross-examination. Judge Keller asked. Marla stood. Ms. Byrne, you've testified that you believe your daughter needs a calm, stable parent. That's correct. Would you consider yourself to be calm and stable? Yes. Ms. Byrne, are you currently in a romantic relationship? Nancy's composure flickered for just a moment. I don't see how that's relevant. Please answer the question. I'm separated from my husband. I'm free to see other people. That wasn't my question. Are you currently in a romantic relationship? Yes. With Mr. Nolan Ridge? Yes. How long has this relationship been going on? Objection, Janet Brennan called out. Relevance. Your Honor, this goes to the credibility of the witness and her claims about providing stability for the child, Marla said. I'll allow it. Please answer the question, Ms. Byrne. Nancy shifted in her seat. Several months. Before or after you filed for separation from your husband? The exact timeline isn't important. Ms. Byrne, I'm going to show you a video that was taken last Tuesday evening. Marla approached the bench with Kevin's phone. Your Honor, Defense Exhibit A. Judge Keller watched the video, her expression neutral. You may proceed. Ms. Byrne, is that you in the video kissing Mr. Ridge? Yes. Ms. Byrne, has your daughter ever been present when you were with Mr. Ridge? Occasionally. Has she ever witnessed intimate moments between you and Mr. Ridge? Nancy's face flushed. I don't know what you mean. Has your daughter ever walked in on you and Mr. Ridge in a compromising position? Objection. Janet Brennan stood up. This is harassment. Overruled. Please answer the question. Nancy glanced at the gallery where Nolan sat. It's possible. And if she did, how did you handle that situation? I explained that adults sometimes have relationships. Did you ask her to keep it secret? I asked her to be discreet. Did you threaten her in any way? Nancy's voice rose slightly. I would never threaten my daughter. Ms. Byrne, I'm going to read you a statement from Cassidy's school counselor. Marla picked up a document. Quote, the minor child reported that her mother struck her and threatened that she would never see her father again if she disclosed what she had witnessed. End quote. Do you deny making this threat? The color drained from Nancy's face. That's not what happened. So you deny threatening your daughter. I was trying to protect her from unnecessary trauma. By hitting her, I didn't hit her. I might have grabbed her arm to get her attention, hard enough to leave a bruise. Nancy looked at her lawyer desperately. I was under a lot of stress. Ms. Byrne, you've testified that Mr. Mallory is unfit to parent because he's too emotional. But isn't it true that you physically assaulted your daughter and threatened her with the loss of her father because you couldn't control your own emotions? Objection. Janet Brennan was on her feet again. Withdrawn. No further questions. Nancy stepped down from the witness stand looking shaken. The defense calls Kevin Mallory, Marla announced. Kevin walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs. He was sworn in and took his seat, looking out at the packed courtroom. Mr. Mallory, Marla began, how long have you been Cassidy's father? 12 years. During those 12 years, have you been involved in her daily care? Every day. Can you give the court some examples? Kevin found his rhythm as he described making Cassidy's lunch every morning, helping with homework, attending school events, teaching her to ride a bike, encouraging her art. Mr. Mallory, your wife has characterized you as emotionally unstable. How do you respond to that? I respond to my daughter's emotions with emotions of my own. When she's happy, I'm happy. When she's hurt, I'm hurt. I don't think that makes me unstable. I think it makes me a father. Have you ever harmed your daughter in any way? Never. Have you ever made her afraid of you? I hope not. Mr. Mallory, do you love your daughter? Kevin's voice caught slightly. More than anything. No further questions. Janet Brennan stood for cross-examination. Mr. Mallory, you testify that you get emotional when your daughter gets emotional. Isn't it true that your emotions are often disproportionate to the situation? I don't think so. When Cassidy fell off her bike and scraped her knee, didn't you panic? I was concerned. She was bleeding. You were crying, weren't you? I might have shed a few tears. My daughter was hurt. Mr. Mallory, don't you think a 12-year-old girl needs a parent who can remain calm in a crisis? Kevin thought about Cassidy cowering in her closet while Nancy screamed at her, about the bruise on her arm, about the fear in her eyes. I think a 12-year-old girl needs a parent who will protect her from people who hurt her, he said quietly. Janet Brennan blinked, momentarily thrown off. That wasn't my question. It was my answer. Judge Keller called for a recess. During the break, Cassidy was brought into the courtroom. She looked small and nervous in a simple blue dress. Judge Keller stood. I'm going to speak with a minor child in my chambers. The courtroom will reconvene in 30 minutes. Kevin watched his daughter disappear into the judge's chambers. Everything depended on what happened in that room. 25 minutes later, Judge Keller emerged from her chambers alone. Her expression was unreadable as she took her seat. Bring the minor child back in, she instructed the bailiff. Cassidy entered the courtroom and was directed to the witness stand. She looked calmer than she had earlier, more resolved. Judge Keller leaned forward slightly. Cassidy, I want you to know that you're not in trouble. You're here to help me understand what's best for you. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. I've just spent some time talking with you privately. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the court? Cassidy looked at her mother, then at her father, then back at the judge. Yes, she said quietly. The courtroom was completely silent. I want to tell everyone the truth. Nancy leaned forward in her chair, her face pale. What truth is that, Cassidy? Judge Keller asked gently. Cassidy took a deep breath. The truth about what really happened. She turned to face the courtroom. My mom said my dad cries too much, and that makes him weak. But my dad cries because he loves me. When I'm hurt, he's hurt. When I'm happy, he's happy. Cassidy's voice grew stronger. My mom doesn't cry when I'm hurt. She gets angry. She says I'm being dramatic or making things worse. Nancy started to stand, but her lawyer pulled her back down. My mom has a boyfriend, Cassidy continued. I saw them kissing in our house. When she caught me, she hit me and told me if I said anything, I'd never see my dad again. Cassidy slowly rolled up her sleeve. The bruise had faded, but was still visible. Then look at this, she said, holding up her arm. The courtroom erupted. Judge Keller banged her gavel for order. She told me to lie, Cassidy said, her voice carrying over the noise. Said if I didn't, no one would believe a crying man. Judge Keller banged her gavel again. Order. Nancy was whispering frantically to her lawyer. Nolan Ridge had gone pale. Cassidy, Judge Keller said, are you afraid of your father? No, never. Are you afraid of your mother? Sometimes. Where do you want to live? With my dad. Judge Keller nodded. You may step down. Cassidy left the witness stand and sat in the gallery next to Cleo, who had arrived during the recess. The court calls Becky Slater, Marla announced. Becky took the stand and testified about her mandatory report, about Cassidy's artwork, about the signs of emotional distress she'd observed. In your professional opinion, Marla asked, is Cassidy afraid of her father? Not at all. Every time she talks about her father, she lights up. She draws pictures of them together. She clearly adores him. What about her mother? Cassidy exhibits classic signs of anxiety when discussing her mother. Her artwork has become darker since the separation. She's lost weight. She's withdrawn from her peers. No further questions. Janet Brennan declined to cross-examine. The defense calls Nolan Ridge, Marla announced. Nolan looked surprised. He glanced at Nancy's lawyer, who shook her head. But the bailiff was already approaching him. I object, Janet Brennan said. Mr. Ridge is not on the witness list. Your Honor, Marla said, Mr. Ridge's relationship with the petitioner is central to this case. The defense has the right to question him. I'll allow it, Judge Keller said. Mr. Ridge, please take the stand. Nolan walked slowly to the witness box. He was a big man in his 40s with graying hair and calloused hands. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit. "Mr. Ridge," Marla began, "what is your relationship to the petitioner?" "We're friends. Friends who kiss in parking lots." Nolan's face flushed. "We're in a relationship." "How long has this relationship been going on?" "About 6 months. Before or after Ms. Byrne separated from her husband?" Nolan glanced at Nancy. "Before. So you were having an affair with a married woman?" "Objection," Janet Brennan called out. "Overruled." "Yes," Nolan said quietly. "Mr. Ridge, have you ever met Cassidy Mallory?" "A few times." "Where did these meetings take place?" "At Nancy's house." "Or restaurants?" "Was Mr. Mallory present during these meetings?" "No." "Mr. Ridge, do you own a construction company?" "Yes." "Have you ever used your business connections to interfere with Mr. Mallory's livelihood?" Nolan shifted in his seat. "I don't know what you mean. Did you threaten Tom Patterson regarding his contract with Mr. Mallory?" "I didn't threaten anyone." "What did you tell Mr. Patterson?" I mentioned that Kevin seemed unstable, that maybe it wasn't a good idea to have him working around customers." "Did you suggest that Mr. Patterson might have trouble with permits if he hired Mr. Mallory?" Nolan was sweating now. "I might have mentioned that the city takes safety seriously." "Mr. Ridge, were you trying to sabotage Mr. Mallory's business?" "I was trying to protect people." "From what?" "From an unstable man who might hurt someone." "What evidence did you have that Mr. Mallory was unstable or dangerous?" "Nancy told me." "So you had no first-hand knowledge of any dangerous behavior?" "No, but—" "Mr. Ridge, did you ever witness Mr. Mallory being violent or threatening?" "No." "Did you ever witness him being inappropriate with his daughter?" "No." "Did you ever witness him being anything other than a loving father?" Nolan hesitated. "No." "But you still tried to destroy his livelihood based on secondhand information from a woman you were having an affair with." "I was trying to help Nancy get custody of her daughter." "Why?" "Because she said Kevin was too emotional to raise a girl properly." "Mr. Ridge, did Ms. Byrne ever tell you that she had hit her daughter?" Nolan's eyes widened. "What? Did she tell you that she had threatened her daughter to keep quiet about your affair?" "No, she never." "Nancy would never hurt Cassidy." "Are you sure about that?" Nolan looked at Nancy. For the first time, doubt crept into his expression. I thought I was helping." "Mr. Ridge, let me ask you this. If you knew that Ms. Byrne had physically assaulted her daughter and threatened her to cover up your affair, would you still be supporting her custody claim?" Nolan stared at Nancy. She was looking down at her hands. "Mr. Ridge, no," he said quietly. "If that's true, then I was wrong about everything." Scene 4. The verdict. Judge Keller called for a 1-hour recess before delivering her ruling. Kevin spent the time in the hallway with Cleo and Cassidy, trying not to think about what would happen if he lost. "Whatever happens," he told Cassidy, "I love you." "I love you too, Dad." When court reconvened, Judge Keller looked stern and tired. "This case has presented the court with conflicting narratives about what is in the best interest of the minor child," she began. "The petitioner claims that the respondent is emotionally unstable and unfit to parent. The respondent claims that the petitioner is manipulative and has abused the child." Judge Keller looked at her notes. After reviewing all the evidence and speaking with the child, the court finds the following. Kevin held his breath. First, there is no credible evidence that Mr. Mallory is emotionally unstable or unfit to parent. The evidence shows that he has been the primary caregiver for this child throughout her life. His emotional responses to his daughter's needs are appropriate and healthy. Kevin felt a surge of relief. Second, there is credible evidence that Ms. Byrne has engaged in conduct that is harmful to the child's welfare. The physical assault on the child and the threats made to silence her are serious matters that call into question Ms. Byrne's fitness as a parent. Nancy was crying now, but quietly. Third, the child has clearly expressed her preference to live with her father, and that preference appears to be based on legitimate concerns about her safety and well-being with her mother. Judge Keller looked directly at Kevin. Therefore, the court awards full legal and physical custody of Cassidy Mallory to her father, Kevin Mallory. The courtroom erupted. Kevin felt tears streaming down his face as Cleo hugged him. Behind him, he could hear Nancy sobbing. Furthermore, Judge Keller continued, raising her voice over the noise. Ms. Burns' visitation with the child will be supervised until she completes a parenting class and anger management counseling. She banged her gavel. The court is also ordering a formal investigation into the allegations of child abuse. This matter is adjourned. Kevin turned to find Cassidy running toward him. He caught her in his arms and held her tight. "We're going home, kiddo," he whispered. "We're going home." 3 weeks after the custody hearing, Kevin was working in his shop when his phone rang. Nancy's name appeared on the screen, but he almost didn't answer. "Hello, Kevin." Nancy's voice was small, defeated. "Can we talk?" "I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just for a minute." Kevin sighed. "What do you want, Nancy?" "I want to apologize." "For what?" "For everything. For lying about you. For hurting Cassidy. For trying to take her away from you." Kevin said nothing. "I know you probably can't forgive me," Nancy continued. "But I need you to know that I never meant for things to go this far. You hit our daughter. I know. I was scared and angry, and I made a terrible mistake. You threatened to take her away from me forever. I was trying to protect myself. I thought if you found out about Nolan, you'd try to use it against me. So you decided to destroy me first." Nancy was crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Kevin felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no pity. Just emptiness. "Save it," he said quietly. "You raised a fist, not a child." He hung up. 2 days later, Cleo called to tell him that Nancy had been arrested. The investigation into the child abuse allegations had led to formal charges. She was facing jail time. Nolan Ridge had ended their relationship and was cooperating with the investigation. His construction company was under review for the threats he made against Kevin's customers. Kevin felt no satisfaction in their downfall. He was focused on moving forward with Cassidy. They started therapy together, both individual sessions and family counseling. Cassidy was dealing with trauma from the custody battle and the abuse. Kevin was learning to process his own anger and betrayal, but they were healing. Together, Kevin's business started to recover as word spread about what had really happened. Tom Patterson hired him for 3 new projects. Other customers began reaching out. Most importantly, Cassidy was smiling again. She was drawing bright, colorful pictures. She was sleeping through the night. She was acting like a 12-year-old again instead of a frightened child. 6 months later, Kevin was teaching a woodworking class for kids at the community center. It was something he'd started after the custody battle, a way to give back and help other children who might be going through difficult times. Cassidy often helped with the younger kids, showing them how to hold tools safely and encouraging their efforts. "Dad," she said one evening as they cleaned up after class, "I made something for you." She handed him a small wooden box she'd been working on in secret. It was beautifully carved with intricate patterns along the sides. "Open it," she said. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Kevin opened it and read, "Dad, you cried when you thought you were losing me. I cry now because you never gave up. Thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for loving me enough to show your feelings. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. Love, Cassidy." Kevin felt tears filling his eyes. He looked at his daughter, who was watching him with a smile. "You know what?" he said, pulling her into a hug. "I think I'm going to cry." Cassidy laughed. "Good. That means you love me more than anything in the world." That night, after Cassidy had gone to bed, Kevin sat in his workshop and thought about everything they'd been through. The lies, the manipulation, the court battles, the fear of losing his daughter. But they'd survived. They'd won, and they'd learned something important along the way. Strength isn't silence. Strength is standing your ground even when the world says you're soft. Kevin smiled and got back to work. He had a dining room table to finish and a daughter to raise.